are they in places? I'm telling you, I believe it's by design. There is a plot. You understand the New World Order concept. Well, there has to be a real system. No one can take over existing systems without a coup. Hitler and Himmler had a dream, spiritually given, to create God-men, hybrids. Modern-day satanic ritual abuse is a continuation, Jim, of Lebensborn and the dream of God-men to be super soldiers, to help bring down existing order and create a global new order.
The problem is the monopoly game, which is controlled by the Federal Reserve, the private bank, which is actually controlled out of London, is manipulating all the dollars to put them out, put more and more people into debt. So the illusion of equity they have in real estate is coming apart. The players that are analyzing everything are expecting massive foreclosures next year and the beginning of what we call the recession it's going to be worse than 29. It's your house that you're living in. You think you own it. You don't.
Right.
You have contractual right to transfer the airspace, subject to you paying taxes to the state.
Right.
Today is August 5th, 2014 on Tuesday. It's now 11:13 p.m. Pacific Time. And up next, something gruesome. Why does the government need guillotines? This is by Dave Hodges. It is dated June 29, 2013. Slightly dated, but very interesting nevertheless. See what you think. When retired FBI agent, the now deceased Ted Gunderson, reportedly told a gathering of militia members that the federal government had set up 1,000 internment camps across the country, I had no trouble believing his statement because there is ample documentation to support his statement. See Rex 84, Operation Garden Plot, and now the NDAA. However, when Gunderson reported that the federal government was storing over 500,000 caskets outside of Atlanta, I already knew he was accurate on this point because Sherry Wilcox found the evidence in the adjacent photo. However, when I heard that Gunderson was accusing the government of storing 30,000 guillotines, I thought he had lost his mind. Why would the government want to store guillotines anyway? Anybody? Gunderson told various patriot groups that the guillotines were being stored for the day that the government declares martial law and moves in to round up and execute American dissenters. Gunderson prophetically told patriot groups that the federal government was going to keep track of all of us. The last statement has indeed proven accurate, given the recent Snowden NSA scandal. Can somebody please explain to me why the government would need to order 30,000 guillotines? For what legitimate purpose could these tools of execution be utilized? Off with their heads. The guillotine was invented by a Frenchman named Dr. Guillotine. The guillotine reached the height of its popularity when it was mainly used in the French Revolution to eliminate any potential opposition from people with dangerous ideas. The guillotine has never been used inside of the U.S. The U.S. has executed people by firing squad, hanging, the electric chair, and lethal injection. The U.S. has never executed a convicted criminal through the use of the guillotine. Given these facts, then why in God's good name would this government import 30,000 guillotines as Gunderson claimed? Oh, I know that some of the sheep are now looking up from the ground and have just said, there aren't any guillotines in the United States. Then please tell me, sheep of America, why did Representative Doug Tepper of the Georgia Legislative Assembly, Democrat, introduce a bill which will supplant the method of execution, the electric chair, with the guillotine? Organ harvesting? Have you ever heard the allegations which accuse some doctors primarily in China of killing patients in order to sell their organs on the black market? After you read the following paragraphs, you may conclude that those rumors are true. When Representative Tepper was asked about his motivation to exclusively use the guillotine to execute death row inmates, he said, "It would allow for death row inmates as organ donors." The very spooky Tepper further reason that the blade makes a clean cut and leaves vital organs intact.
Or the Global 2000 discussions that we had, the real problem that they have, as Kissinger says, is there are just too many people on the planet. And 40% of the world, 2 billion of us, exist on less than $2 a day. The summary of the Global 2000 report I put up on my website, nohoax.com, but if you look at it, it makes sense to get rid of people. So what they said, they're going to make godlike decisions on who lives and who dies. Now, obviously, some of the meetings we sat on, we were planning on using neutron bombs on the major cities, because that contains most of what they call...
You actually heard this?
I sat in on the meetings. I was in the game big time. In fact, I was making such a mess, they decided rather than kill me, which they could, they just invited me into the inner group and asked me to be the finance chairman. And at that point, I probably would have been in, Secretary of the Treasury or whatever they wanted to do with me. What I was doing prior to that, so, making it right, I would volunteer to become a president of a company, and I'd go in and liquidate it. And we get rid of the expendable containers. That was my job.
Expendable containers meaning human beings?
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's
Well, that
really
was the
inside
terminology.
Vernacular, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what we used at that time. I mean, it went from there to useless eaters today, so you're happy with it, you're a human resource. So,
Right.
which, all you are is part of the commodity, even in the business sense. You look at it, you have a cost. Labor, what is labor?
Yeah.
Human resource.
Right.
When you're going to put together some kind of product. Well, the inside of the game, when we started to use neutron bombs, today they figure that biologicals are much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
They're still planning on, the plan is to get a war started in the Middle East. And they're still planning on using a neutron bomb, or one of the bombs that they've got developed on Israel, and that's to begin World War III, which is all on the cards. And it's going to happen. They even put a monument up for this whole program. It's called the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of Atlanta,
Right.
and they've got it all set down there. It's all in 8 languages. Basically, it's fait accompli as far as they're concerned. It's just to get the thing going in the Middle East, and it's not going fast enough. I mean, Carter put this thing in, so we have the Plan 2000 with the war starting in the year 2000 in the Middle East.
Right.
Reduce the population of the planet down to 500 million, have one world currency under the Homeland Security, or FEMA if you want to call it. They're going to declare an emergency, which are going to shut down everything. My friends, my CIA associates, I don't even call them friends anymore. CIA is crooks in action.
Yeah.
They're all professional liars.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to be if they have that job.
Yeah.
I will be happy to let this statement speak for itself. Below is a draft of the legislation. And here it is, Death Penalty Guillotine Provisions, HB 1274. And you can read all about that if you wish. It's all here. Let me read part of it anyway. All persons who have been convicted of a capital offense and have had imposed upon them a sentence of death shall, at the election of the condemned, suffer such punishment either by electrocution or by, guillotine. And it goes on from there. The Department of Corrections shall provide a death chamber and all necessary apparatus, machinery, and appliances for inflicting the penalty of death by electrocution or by guillotine. Where would the proposed Georgia legislature guillotines have come from, unless Gunderson was correct in that 15,000 are being stored in Montana and 15,000 are being stored in Georgia? An efficient killing machine. Has anyone bothered to do the math? A single guillotine reportedly can chop off the heads of about 100 people per hour. In 1 hour, the federal government has the capacity to execute as many as 3 million people. In one 10-hour day, 30 million people could be executed by way of the guillotine. Other alphabet soup agents speak out. Ted Gunderson is not the only former alphabet soup agent to tell all about guillotines. The late Bill Polowek, ex-CIA, was a close friend of mine and eventually became the significant other of the news director for the Common Sense show, Annie DeRiso. Polowek told both Annie and I on several occasions that guillotines were being stored on several military bases. The late A.C. Griffith, ex-NSA, said the same on more than one occasion on my talk show. In light of these confirmations from known and from public sources, as well as the proposed legislation of Representative Tepper to introduce the use of guillotines on American soil, I believe that there is no question the story is true. Implications. We already know that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased 2.2 billion rounds of ammunition to go with their purchase of 2,700 armored personnel carriers. Do you realize that this is enough ammo to fight a war for about 7 years, and that there are enough DHS personnel carriers to allocate over 50 per state? Can you imagine if they were concentrated in their distribution patterns? This would be the equivalent of an invading army as DHS goes from house to house and seizes dissidents by the millions, and America will soon have their own version of the French Revolution. Since this story broke, I have asked the question, why guillotines? I have talked to several of my off-the-record sources, and the consensus is frightening. Everyone that I have spoken to agrees that the guillotine is highly efficient. Most everyone I have talked with stated that organ harvesting will indeed be an even bigger business, and the guillotine is the most efficient killing machine to that end. Some of my sources stated that the next phase of the transhumanism experiments and developments requires a severed human head to facilitate the mixing of humans and animals into one sentient being. Ooh. Further, futuristic DARPA robots will have human heads after the initial purge and subsequent executions. And it says see photo below. I don't even know if I want to look at the photo. This makes sense because after the head is severed, the eyes blink and signs of life continue for up to 1 minute. This would allow a team to freeze and to preserve the head for whatever purpose. And just as frightening, I was told that some of the satanic rituals require severed human heads, and we know the global elite in large part are indeed Satanists. I can understand people being skeptical about the guillotines because my first reaction was to reject the notion under my personal veil of cognitive dissonance. Yet, the emerging facts speak for themselves. Although I did not know Gunderson personally, I did know Bill Polowek as a close friend, and I was well acquainted with Griffith. And even if Polowek and Griffith were jointly mistaken on this issue, how would one explain away Tepper's efforts to introduce the guillotine into the Georgia justice system? The endgame implications are frightening. When we add the topic of guillotines to what we already know about 2.2 billion rounds of DHS ammo and 2,700 armored DHS personnel carriers, why should this be so hard to believe? How can we take the fact that DHS has armed to the teeth against Americans and are planning to murder us in horrific ways as anything but a declaration of war? Be prepared to be shocked as you watch the following chilling report on the possession and intent of the military with regard to the use of guillotines. And here's a video. America's guillotines and FEMA coffins. It says President O secretly ordered the immediate opening of America's vast gulag of concentration camps and what they are calling Project Endgame.
Hi, this is Nicholson 1968. Welcome to my project, Building the Perfect Beast, Illuminati's Black Gold Project. But this is very important that you understand the difference between the phenomenon of black goo versus black programmable matter. They're two different things. If you're not familiar with that, that's okay. Watch the video, you'll understand. There are two things going on here at work. One is to lead you astray with the black goo. It is very important that we learn the difference between the two, because one is leading you astray again, the other one they don't want you to know about. That's why when you search in YouTube for black goo, my video is lost in the mix between that, and that's not what this is. This is something totally different. They try to lump this video of black programmable matter in with the black goo, and that's not what this video is. That's why I'm re-releasing it.
You're going to learn some amazing stuff. This is absolutely at the forefront, the cutting edge of science right now. It's not your grandfather's genetic engineering in the sense of taking two genes and splicing them together. This is a radically new notion. People are actually composing life. What they're doing is they're writing DNA, and they're writing it the same way that a software developer would write code for a computer. Except in this case, they're writing DNA that's then put into a living thing and can replicate and can replicate.
Exactly, except now we're working with a different type of computer, really bacteria. They're like information processors that do chemicals, but they're different. They're programmable, but the cool thing is they also make more of themselves. So they're like computers that can reproduce. This is pretty powerful.
That's amazing.
And if you look at a bacterial genome, it has about 5 megabits of information. Really, small photograph. But this is enough to program a living thing. And really, if you've got a software program, you have to learn the basics. You have to learn how to read it. You have to learn how to write it. Right. We've been sequencing with devices like this. This is a desktop. It's about the size of a laser printer, but it can do a whole human genome. And reading it, we're starting to comprehend more and more of the basic tools of life.
Meanwhile, they're closing in every day right now, just closing in to make it so we're going to be set up in these enemy prisoner war camps. I published a book. It's called Chaos in America. Mm-hmm. In it, I was asked to build an enemy prisoner war camp. I put the contract in this book, so you can read it for yourself. This is in downtown Las Vegas, right on the railroad tracks. It says enemy prisoner war camp. They're all on top. And they're building them all the way across the United States right now. Bush signed an executive order taking the old forts and the army places that we shut down to get those organized to hold the so-called dissidents. Now, what's the definition of a dissident? And the problem is that we're going to enslave ourselves, because most of the people want to keep having food coming in, and you're going to follow the line. You're just walking yourself into your own prison camp. Then we're going to come down to the extermination, just like World War II.
Right.
Well, Phil and I have lectured together. I know Phil Snyder. He's dead now.
Yeah, I know he's dead. And so what about what he was saying about the number of bases at that time? I think it was 129 bases before he died. Underground had already been built. Is that all for the elite?
Yeah.
Really?
What are they going to do with the rest of the people? They just get rid of them, leave them above ground and be radiated. Now, my son happens to be a nuclear physicist. Mm-hmm. Spent the last 3.5 years in a secret city in Russia. They're about 12 years ahead of us. They have 22,000 nuclear warheads. And of course, we're the target. The Soviets have 3 nuclear submarines on the west coast and 3 on the east coast. They're about 2 football fields in length, 5 stories tall, and they all are nuclear power and aimed at our major cities. West
Okay.
Coast's gone. Well, because the plan is the northern hemisphere is where they're going to release the nuclear bombs, and the theory was that the winds from the North Pole that are coming down, because that's increasing drastically,
Right.
will go to the equator, and there will be very little spillover because of the reverse of the winds, because of the southern hemisphere.
Okay.
So therefore, the nuclear radiation here will be a lot more than the southern hemisphere.
And this is a fait accompli, you believe?
Oh, they
Really?
think so. Oh, yeah, they think they've won. That's the reason why they don't bother about me talking about it. They don't care whether you know or not. What are you going to do about it? And you have no idea what China is until you go over there for yourself. With 1,300,000,000. You understand? Almost, well, a little over 4 times our population.
Right.
It's, I spent some time over there and I had some government friends. They think what they're going to do is let the West go have its fight. And then they want to clean up. They say it's been 5,000 years. We want to run the world when we get through. And what they're doing? Acquiring all the assets. They figure that Canada and the United States, the property there will, the food growing areas will be enough to take care of their people.
And in this photo here, it looks like it says, can you tell the real person from the DARPA-produced robot? Will human-looking robots replace interim human slaves?
So there you go. Lady Gaga showing you an agenda in her commercial from her perfume fame. So that's how they work. They show it to you in music videos, commercials, movies, media right in front of us. The next part is going to be from Christina Aguilera, showing you the same thing. Album called Bionic. There you go. It's telling you right there, man and machine together. Notice though that her name is broken up into 2 colors. One Christina and then Aguilera. One is red, which what did I tell you? Of the blood, and the other is bleeding programmable matter. She is also in a pose like a cat, MK Ultra sex kitten beta programming. If you don't know about that, I have a whole section on my website about that, the sex kitten MK controlled, what is going on. What you're going to notice though, besides the obvious of the video, Not Myself Tonight, is the cover and the shape of a demonic, the horns, the tail. But what you'll see in most all of the videos that are Illuminati and the women, they always hold their ears like they can't hear. That's the transmissions that from control, MK Ultra control. They always hold their ears. It's because of the MK Ultra control, programmable per se, symbolism. But also in this Not Myself Tonight video is showing her in bondage, number one, showing her she's dancing inside the temple or inside a church on purpose, and cloning is shown. Multiple ladies that look like herself. It's cloning, reproducing the one eye symbolism as well within this video. But it's very important what you're being shown is the beast in the temple of God. What I've been shown is, and that's what transhuman is something inside the temple of God that's not supposed to be there.
At this point, bear in mind that the Illuminati was not set up to operate on a short-range basis. Normally, a conspirator of any type enters into a conspiracy with the expectation of achieving his objective during his own lifetime. But that was not the case with the Illuminati. True, they hope to accomplish their objective during their lifetime. But, paraphrasing The Show Must Go On, the Illuminati operates on the very long-range basis. Whether it will take scores of years or even centuries, they have dedicated their descendants to keep the plot boiling until, they hope, the conspiracy is achieved.
Think the fax is dead? Wait until you can fax your whole body. Well, what if we take that same idea, but think small? I mean really small. I'm talking about programmable matter, actual three-dimensional tactile material that can take on any predetermined shape and then change shapes on demand. Imagine that we have a programmable material workstation. That might include a little trough with some beige putty in it. And this putty looks totally normal until you send it some information, like a virtual model of a three-dimensional object. And then it springs into action, forming that object right in front of your eyes. Now, it sounds like it's the stuff of science fiction, and that crazy kind of technology has to be 100 years away, right? Maybe, but maybe not.
Now let's go back to the crux of the whole one world government plot and the maneuvering necessary to create another League of Nations to house such a government. As I have already stated, the conspirators knew that only another world war was vital for the success of their plot. It would have to be such a horrifying world war that the peoples of the world would cry out for the creation of some kind of a world organization that could assure everlasting peace. But how could such a war be brought about? All the European nations were at peace. None had any quarrels with their neighboring nations, and certainly their tools in Moscow wouldn't dare to start a war. Even Stalin realized that it would mean the overthrow of his regime unless so-called patriotism would weld the Russian people behind him. But the conspirators had to have a war. They had to find or create some kind of an incident to launch it. And they found it in a little inconspicuous and repulsive little man who called himself Adolf Hitler. Hitler, an impecunious Austrian house painter, had been a corporal in the German army. He made the defeat of Germany into a personal grievance. He began to rabble-rouse about it in the Munich, Germany area. He began to spout about restoring the greatness of the German Empire and the might of the German soldiery. He advocated the restoration of the old German military to be used to conquer the whole world. Strangely enough, Hitler, the little clown that he was, could deliver a rabble-rousing speech, and he did have a certain kind of magnetism. But the new authorities in Germany didn't want any more wars, and they promptly threw the obnoxious Austrian house painter into a prison cell. Aha! Here was the man, decided the conspirators, who, properly directed and financed, could be the key to another world war. So while he was in prison, they had Rudolf Hess and Goering write a book which they titled Mein Kampf, and attributed the authorship to Hitler, exactly as Litvinov wrote Mission to Moscow and attributed the authorship to Joseph Davies, then our ambassador to Russia and a stooge of the CFR. In Mein Kampf, Hitler, the pseudo-author, outlined his grievances and how he would restore the German people to their former greatness. The conspirators then arranged for a wide circulation of the book among the German people, in order to arouse a fanatical following for him. On his release from prison, also arranged by the conspirators, they began to groom him and finance him to travel to other parts of Germany to deliver his rabble-rousing speeches. Soon he gathered a growing following among other veterans of the war, and that soon spread to the masses, who began to see in him a savior for their beloved Germany. Then came his leadership of what he called his brown shirt army and the march on Berlin. That required a great deal of financing, but the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, and others of the conspirators provided all the money he needed. Gradually, Hitler became the idol of the German people, and then they overthrew the von Hindenburg government, and Hitler became the new Führer. But that still was no reason for a war. The rest of the world watched Hitler's rise, but saw no reason to interfere in what was distinctly a domestic condition within Germany. Certainly none of the other nations felt it was a reason for another war against Germany, and the German people were not yet incited into enough of a frenzy to commit any acts against any neighboring nation, not even against France, that would lead to a war. The conspirators realized they would have to create such a frenzy that would cause the German people to throw caution to the winds and at the same time horrify the whole world. And incidentally, Mein Kampf was actually a follow-up of Karl Marx's book, A World Without Jews. The conspirators suddenly remembered how the Schiff Rothschild gang had engineered the pogroms in Russia, which slaughtered many, many thousands of Jews and created a worldwide hatred for Russia. And they decided to use that same unconscionable trick to inflame the new Hitler-led German people into a murderous hatred of the Jews.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
Now again, I've seen some crazy stuff. I've made some videos where I had to put together that I didn't really want to do. But when I say that my mouth was dropped open like this, like, I'm serious. My mouth was like that because I'm like, are you serious? Now, I couldn't really believe what I was watching, even though I know that it's true. What you're about to see is the workers in a zombie-like trance. It's pretty freaky. What you will now see is Satan having sex with a woman. This is obvious from the sounds and what is going on. This is why I stated I believe it points more to the triple strand DNA. Alright, now the beast and the woman have become one. The seed of the beast is in the woman's womb, as you will see, and she is going to give birth to the man of sin, the Antichrist.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts, that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined.
From the shadows, they have engineered every major war, revolution, and recession. They control everything you read, everything you hear, and everything you see. They have managed to indoctrinate an entire populace to their way of thinking and have infiltrated key positions in places of authority. And it is from the shadows that they have created a new political order, a new economic order, and more sinister, a new religious order. Their ultimate aim is total global domination, and they will stop at nothing to reach their goal. The goal that was outlined in a speech given by former President of the United States, George Bush.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
The ancient hope of which Bush refers to in his second inauguration speech demonstrates that Bush, or at the very least the authors of his speech, are well aware of the plan initiated by an ancient occult hierarchy now operating as secret societies to forge a world empire. The promise to those who help build this empire is that they will attain godhood themselves and become a part of a family of perfected human beings.
And this is a fait accompli, you believe?
Oh, they think so. Oh, yeah, they think they won. That's the reason why they don't bother about me talking about it. They don't care whether you know or not. What are you going to do about it?